Would you believe one grandmother's bean soup recipe once saved 200 hungry families in Cedar Rapids? With just pennies a day, she proved that Depression-era wisdom could feed an entire town. Today, as grocery prices hit record highs, these forgotten recipes aren't just history. They're your financial lifeline. In the next few minutes, you'll discover 25 incredible Depression-era recipes that could save your family thousands. From no-egg chocolate cakes to rent-saving soups, these aren't just recipes, they're kitchen gold. Let's uncover how Great Depression wisdom can solve your 2024 grocery crisis. Poor man's stew. In the darkest days of the Depression, when meat was as rare as a winning lottery ticket, Detroit's auto worker neighborhoods discovered kitchen magic. Poor man's stew could feed an entire family for what we spend on coffee today. A single tough cut of beef, worth 15 cents back then, transformed into a meal for 12 hungry mouths. The secret wasn't in fancy ingredients, it was all in the technique. Auto workers' wives found that cubing tough meat into tiny pieces and slow cooking it with root vegetables created something extraordinary. Brown the meat chunks until dark, add potato peels, carrots, onions, and whatever vegetables were on hand. During the Depression, one pot cost 30 cents total. Today, you can make this same hearty stew for about $8. That's 67 cents per serving compared to $6 to $7 for canned stews. The magic happens during the 4-hour simmer, where each ingredient shares its essence. Modern families using this method report saving up to $120 monthly on their grocery bills. Even better? This stew actually tastes better the next day, making it perfect for weekly meal prep. While Detroit was stretching beef into miracles over in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, a grandmother's simple bean soup was about to save an entire community from hunger. Navy bean soup. When the Cedar Rapids Bank closed in 1932, Mrs. Emma Thompson took action with a pot of beans and an idea that would feed 200 families. Her navy bean soup wasn't fancy, but it had something more valuable: staying power. For just 25 cents worth of beans, she created a protein-rich soup that kept bellies full and spirits high. The brilliance lay in its bone broth base. She collected ham bones from local butchers, pieces others threw away, and simmered them until every bit of flavor leached into the water. Add navy beans, dried herbs, and onions, and magic happened. During the Depression, one pot cost 32 cents and fed 20 people. Today, this same soup costs about $5 total. That's 25 cents per serving compared to $3 to $4 for canned bean soup. Modern home cooks report saving upwards of $100 monthly using this technique, especially when cooking big batches and freezing portions. Today's pressure cookers cut the cooking time from 6 hours to just 45 minutes, while keeping all that Great Depression wisdom intact. Speaking of community-saving recipes, our next dish shows how the humblest vegetable became a neighborhood hero. Cabbage Patch Soup. When a head of cabbage cost just 2 cents during the Depression, smart cooks turned this humble vegetable into liquid gold. Cabbage Patch Soup became the talk of tenement buildings in New York's Lower East Side, where immigrant families taught each other how to make something magical from almost nothing. This wasn't just soup, it was a lesson in turning pennies into prosperity. The genius was in the layering. Start with saved bacon fat, if you were lucky, or a spoonful of lard. Slow cook shredded cabbage until it turned sweet, then add whatever vegetables the corner store was selling cheap that day. During the Depression, one pot cost 8 cents and fed 10 people. Today, you can make this nourishing soup for about $3 total. That's 30 cents per bowl, compared to $5 for canned soup at the store. Modern families are discovering that this old-time recipe saves them up to $85 monthly on grocery bills. Plus, it's packed with vitamin C and fiber, making it a healthy choice for budget-conscious families. The secret to its staying power? Every bowl tastes like home. While cabbage kept city families fed, rural households were turning another cheap vegetable into something that tasted like it came from a fancy French restaurant. Get ready to discover how potato and leek soup went from poor man's dinner to restaurant star. Potato and leek soup. During the Depression, farm families discovered they could turn two of their cheapest crops into something that tasted like pure luxury. Potato and leek soup wasn't just filling, it was a creamy delight that made people forget their troubles. The secret? It was all in the slow cooking and clever seasoning. Farmers knew that leeks, those often overlooked cousins of onions, had a buttery sweetness when cooked just right. Combined with potatoes and a pinch of dried herbs from the garden, they created a soup so silky smooth you'd never guess there was no cream in it. Back then, one pot cost 12 cents to make. Today, this same soup costs about $4 total. That's 40 cents per serving compared to $8 bowls at fancy restaurants. Home cooks using this recipe report saving up to $95 monthly on their food bills, especially when they grow their own leeks. The best part? This soup freezes beautifully, making it perfect for batch cooking and saving even more money. While some families were mastering creamy soups, others were discovering how to turn a handful of corn into something that would revolutionize breakfast forever. Depression-era chowder, the seafood-free surprise. In coastal Maine, where fish chowder was a way of life, the Depression forced creative thinking when seafood became too expensive. Resourceful cooks created a mock fish chowder that fooled even the pickiest fishermen. The secret? It was all in the humble salt pork and potatoes with a splash of ingenuity. Starting with a base of diced salt pork, just 5 cents worth back then, cooks would render every bit of flavor, then add potatoes, onions, and a pinch of dried thyme. The genius was in the final touch. Crushed saltine crackers thickened the broth and gave it that seafood-like texture. During the Depression, one pot cost 15 cents and fed 8 people. Today, this same hearty chowder costs about $4 total. That's 50 cents per bowl compared to $7 for canned clam chowder. Modern families using this recipe report saving up to $75 monthly, especially when serving it for meatless Monday dinners. Even better, nobody misses the seafood. While creative cooks were mastering chowder without seafood, others were tackling an even bigger challenge, making biscuits without milk. Get ready to discover the secret that kept breakfast on the table. Depression-era biscuits. No milk? No problem. When fresh milk became a luxury few could afford, Southern kitchens refused to give up their beloved biscuits. Instead, they created a recipe so clever it's still used in emergency preparedness guides today. These milk-free biscuits proved that determination could beat any shortage. The magic happened when cooks discovered that water mixed with a spoonful of vinegar could replace buttermilk. Combined with flour, a bit of saved bacon grease, and baking soda, these biscuits rose just as high as their dairy-based cousins. During the Depression, one batch cost 6 cents and made a dozen biscuits. Today, you can make these for about $1.50 total, just 13 cents each compared to $1 for store-bought biscuits. Budget-conscious bakers now save up to $60 monthly using this recipe, especially when serving breakfast. The real surprise? Many say these biscuits taste better than the milk versions. Speaking of bread miracles, our next recipe shows how 3 simple ingredients could create a loaf so satisfying it became known as survival bread across America. Poor man's bread, the 3-ingredient miracle. When yeast was scarce and flour was precious, someone discovered that you could make a perfectly good loaf of bread with just flour, water, and salt. This poor man's bread wasn't just a recipe. It was a revelation that spread across the country like wildfire. The technique was deceptively simple. Mix flour with warm water and a pinch of salt. Then let time do the work. After sitting overnight, natural yeasts in the air would begin to work their magic. During the Depression, one loaf cost 4 cents to make. Today, this same artisan-style bread costs about $1 in ingredients compared to $5 to $6 for bakery sourdough. Modern home bakers report saving up to $90 monthly making this bread, and many say it's better than expensive artisan loaves. The secret? Patience and practice make perfect, just like in Depression times. While some families mastered the art of bread making, others were discovering how to turn a simple tortilla into a meal that could stretch for days. Flour tortillas, the Western miracle. Out in New Mexico's dusty ranching towns, Mexican grandmothers taught their neighbors a survival secret that would change Western cooking forever. Flour tortillas weren't just bread, they were portable, versatile, and could turn any leftover into tomorrow's meal. These thin, flexible discs became known as Ranch Family Gold. The beauty lay in the simplicity: flour, water, and a spoonful of saved bacon fat or lard. Rolling them paper thin required skill, but the reward was worth every minute of practice. During the Depression, 20 tortillas cost just 7 cents to make. Today, a batch costs about $1.50. That's 8 cents each compared to $4 to $5 for a pack at the store. Modern families embracing this tradition save up to $65 monthly on bread alternatives. The real value? One batch can become breakfast burritos, lunch wraps, and dinner quesadillas, stretching both food and dollars across multiple meals. But here's where our story takes an unexpected turn. 3 states over, in Oklahoma's wheat country, necessity was about to birth another bread revolution. Emergency bread, the overnight sensation. Oklahoma wheat farmers faced a puzzling challenge in 1932. Plenty of flour, but no yeast to make it rise. That's when someone remembered an old pioneer technique that would soon sweep through farming communities like a summer storm. This emergency bread used baking soda and soured milk to create lift. No yeast needed. Smart cooks learned to keep a cup of milk out overnight, letting it naturally sour for the next day's baking. A pinch of sugar helped the browning, but it wasn't essential. During the Depression, each loaf cost 5 cents. Today's version runs about $1.25, pennies compared to $4 store-bought bread. Thrifty bakers now pocket savings of $70 to $80 monthly using this method. The unexpected bonus? This quick bread takes just 45 minutes from mix to table. Time for a journey south, where another kitchen revolution was brewing in Georgia's farmhouse kitchens. Survival cornbread. Thunder rattled Georgia windows one stormy night in 1931 when Mrs. Sarah Johnson discovered she was out of eggs, but her family still needed their daily cornbread. That night of improvisation gave birth to a recipe that would sustain thousands through the Depression's darkest days. Her eggless cornbread used a splash of vinegar and water to create moisture, while bacon grease added richness. The result? A golden-crusted bread that became a Southern legend. During the Depression, one skillet cost 6 cents to make. Today's version costs about $1, compared to $3 to $4 for store-bought cornbread mix. Home cooks following this recipe bank savings of $45 to $50 monthly. But the real treasure isn't just money, it's the crispy bottom crust that only comes from a well-seasoned cast-iron skillet. Just up the road, in Tennessee's mountain communities, another kitchen miracle was taking shape in the most unexpected way. Victory Meatloaf, the meat multiplier. A pound of ground beef meant tough choices in 1932, but in Pittsburgh's steel mill neighborhoods, resourceful cooks cracked the code on making meat feed 3 times more mouths. Victory Meatloaf wasn't just a recipe, it was mathematical magic on a dinner plate. The secret lay in what went into the mix. Quick cooking oats, grated potatoes, and breadcrumbs worked together to stretch that precious meat. 1 pound suddenly fed 9 people instead of 3. Back then, the entire loaf cost 35 cents to make. Today, the same filling recipe costs about $6 total. That's 67 cents per serving compared to $2.50 for regular meatloaf. Modern families report slashing their meat budget by $95 monthly with this technique. The surprise bonus? The added ingredients actually make it more flavorful and moist than traditional meatloaf. The rumble of trains passing through town reminds us of our next money-saving miracle. Depression casserole, the one-pot promise. As trains crossed America in 1933, railroad workers' wives traded a recipe so valuable it became known as paycheck stretcher. Depression casserole turned whatever was on hand into a meal that could feed an entire family with leftovers for tomorrow. The brilliance was in its adaptability. Layer sliced potatoes, onions, and any available vegetables with a sprinkle of ground meat. Just a quarter pound would do. Rice or noodles could bulk it up even more. During hard times, one casserole cost 28 cents. Today's version runs about $5, feeding 6 people for less than $1 each, compared to $4 to $5 per serving for takeout. Kitchen-savvy families now save upwards of $120 monthly using this flexible format. Their secret? Following the Railroad Wives' motto, use what you've got, waste what you've not. A warm campfire glow lights our path to the next Depression-era innovation. Hobo dinner. Born in hobo camps along America's rail lines, this brilliant cooking method turned simple ingredients into a feast fit for anyone's table. Wrapped in newspaper back then, we use foil today, these tidy packets contained a complete meal that practically cooked itself. The method was foolproof. Layer sliced potatoes, carrots, onions, and a small piece of meat if you had it. The vegetables steam cooked in their own juices, making every bite tender and flavorful. Depression-era cost, 18 cents per packet. Today you can make these for about $2 each, compared to $12 to $15 for a restaurant dinner. Smart cooks now pocket savings of $85 to $100 monthly with this technique. Plus, modern campers and busy families love that there's zero cleanup, just like the original hobo cooks intended. Deep in America's heartland, farm kitchens were about to reveal their own money-saving secret, poor man's steak. In Chicago's bustling neighborhoods, a clever cook discovered something remarkable. Navy beans, when seasoned and shaped just right, could fool anyone into thinking they were eating beef patties. This kitchen miracle spread through tenement buildings like wildfire, earning the nickname Depression-era ribeye. The magic happened in the seasoning. Mashed navy beans mixed with finely diced onions, a dash of beef bouillon if you had it, and breadcrumbs. Shaped into patties and fried until golden, they developed a crust that looked and tasted surprisingly meaty. During the Depression, 6 steaks cost 13 cents. Today, the same recipe costs $3 total. That's 50 cents per serving, compared to $6 to $8 for real beef patty. Families using this recipe now save up to $140 monthly on meat costs. The best part? Even meat lovers ask for seconds. Nature herself whispers the secret of our next money-saving recipe. Garden patch dinner, backyard bounty. Smart families during the Depression turned every inch of their backyards into edible gold mines. The garden patch dinner wasn't just a meal. It was a celebration of what you could grow yourself. Empty lots between Detroit's auto plants became victory gardens that fed entire blocks. The recipe changed with the seasons. Summer squash, tomatoes, and green beans in August, root vegetables, and cabbage in fall. Everything went into one pot with a handful of herbs. During hard times, each dinner cost only 8 cents. Today's homegrown version costs about $2 total, mere pennies compared to $15 for store-bought vegetables. Modern urban gardeners report saving $200 monthly during growing season. Their secret? Following Grandma's rule, plant it, pick it, plate it. Mother Nature had even more free gifts to offer. Foraged greens. The fanciest restaurants today charge top dollar for dandelion greens and wild mushrooms. But Depression-era families knew these ingredients grew free for anyone clever enough to gather them. One Pennsylvania grandmother fed her entire family through summer using knowledge passed down from Native Americans. The technique was simple, but required wisdom. Gather young dandelion greens before flowers appear, wild onions in early spring, and lamb's quarters whenever you spot them. A splash of vinegar made everything taste garden fresh. Cost during the Depression? Just the energy to pick them. Today, these same greens sell for $5 to $6 per bunch at farmers markets. Modern foragers save up to $150 monthly during growing season. But here's the real goal. These wild greens pack more nutrition than their store-bought cousins. As creative cooks mastered nature's bounty, they turned their attention to another challenge: potato cakes, leftovers golden makeover. In Boston's Irish neighborhoods, leftover mashed potatoes never went to waste. They transformed into something so delicious, families deliberately made extra mash just to create these golden-crusted cakes the next day. One bite of their crispy exterior revealed a creamy center that made people forget their troubles. The transformation required just 3 ingredients: cold mashed potatoes, a spoonful of flour, and an onion if you had it. Shaped into patties and fried until crisp, they became breakfast, lunch, or dinner. During the Depression, 8 cakes cost 7 cents to make. Today's version runs about $1.50 total. That's 19 cents each, compared to $4 for restaurant hash browns. Clever cooks now save up to $60 monthly by mastering this leftover magic. Their motto? Yesterday's potatoes, today's gold. As pennies got tighter, another vegetable hero stepped into the spotlight. Fried cabbage, the dime store diamond. A head of cabbage cost just 1 thin dime in 1932. But in Cincinnati's working-class kitchens, that dime turned into pure culinary alchemy. Housewives discovered that slow-frying cabbage in a bit of saved bacon grease created a dish so tasty children begged for seconds. The secret lay in patience. Shredded cabbage cooked low and slow until each piece caramelized to sweet perfection. A pinch of pepper was all it needed. During hard times, one skillet fed 6 for 11 cents. Today's cost? About $2 total, or 33 cents per serving, compared to $3 to $4 for other side dishes. Modern families bank savings of $45 monthly with this recipe. Plus, it's ready in 15 minutes. Faster than any drive-through window. Sweet success was growing right beneath their feet. Carrot coins, nature's candy. Depression-era parents faced a tough challenge: how to give their children treats when sugar was a luxury. Then someone discovered that carrots, sliced thin and cooked just right, could satisfy even the strongest sweet tooth. These penny candies became a sensation in school lunch pails across America. The magic happened in the pan. Thin carrot slices, a tiny pat of butter if available, and slow cooking until they turned sweet as candy. During the Depression, a batch cost 4 cents. Today, you can make these for about $1 total, pennies compared to $4 to $5 for processed snacks. Health-conscious parents now save $75 monthly using this natural sweet treat. The unexpected bonus? Kids actually ask for vegetables. A pinch of imagination was about to transform another humble ingredient, Depression slaw. Chicago summers demanded cool, crisp salads, but mayonnaise was a luxury few could afford. That's when neighborhood cooks created a vinegar-based slaw, so good it made people forget about mayo altogether. This tangy creation became known as summer survival slaw. The brilliance was in its simplicity: shredded cabbage, grated carrots, and a dressing made from vinegar, a spoonful of sugar, and a dash of celery seeds if you had them. Time was the secret ingredient. Letting it marinate for an hour made every vegetable sing. During the Depression, one big bowl cost 9 cents. Today's version runs about $2 total. That's 25 cents per serving, compared to $3 for deli slaw. Modern picnickers save up to $40 monthly with this recipe. Better yet, it stays fresh for days in the icebox. No spoiled mayo worries. Hidden in kitchen cupboards, yesterday's bread held an amazing secret. Poverty pudding, old bread's sweet revenge. In 1933, a Missouri grandmother refused to throw away stale bread, creating instead a dessert so delicious it became her family's most requested recipe. Little did she know her waste-not pudding would save countless families from going hungry while satisfying their sweet tooth. Her method was pure genius. Tear stale bread into pieces, soak it in sweetened milk, add a sprinkle of cinnamon, and bake until golden. Some lucky families added a beaten egg or raisins. Depression-era cost? 8 cents per pan. Today, you can make this comfort classic for $1.50, about 25 cents per serving, compared to $5 bakery puddings. Thrifty dessert lovers now pocket $55 monthly in savings. Their secret? Collecting bread ends and slightly stale pieces in the freezer until baking day. But the most magical transformation was yet to come. Water pie. It sounds impossible, making a pie with nothing but water, flour, and a few pantry basics. Yet, in Tennessee mountain kitchens, resourceful cooks created a dessert so clever it seemed like pure sorcery. Water pie became living proof that imagination could turn nothing into something amazing. The spell was cast with simple ingredients: water, butter the size of a walnut, and a sprinkle of sugar and flour. When baked, these humble elements transformed into a silky custard that defied logic. During hard times, one pie cost 7 cents. Today's version costs about $1.75. That's 22 cents a slice, compared to $4 to $5 for store-bought pies. Modern bakers amaze their guests with this recipe, saving up to $65 monthly on desserts. Most satisfying? watching faces light up when they learn the pie's main ingredient is plain water. In pantries across America, another sweet revelation was brewing. Depression-era fudge, the chocolate-free miracle. Real chocolate was a distant memory for most families in 1932, but in rural Kentucky, clever cooks created a fudge so convincing it satisfied even the strongest chocolate cravings. The secret ingredient? Plain old coffee mixed with vanilla and sugar. This innovative treat used coffee grounds boiled with milk and sugar until thick, then beaten until creamy. A splash of vanilla created an almost chocolate flavor that fooled everyone's taste buds. During the Depression, one batch cost 14 cents. Today's version costs about $2 total. That's 25 cents per piece, compared to $4 for store-bought fudge. Modern candy makers save up to $45 monthly using this recipe for bake sales and holidays. The unexpected bonus? This fudge actually has less sugar than traditional versions. A pinch of sugar and a dash of determination led to our next sweet discovery. Poor man's cookies. Massachusetts mill workers' wives had a saying, "If you've got flour, sugar, and shortening, you've got cookies." Their 3-ingredient cookies became legendary in factory towns, proving that simple could be spectacular. The technique was brilliantly basic. Cream together sugar and shortening, add flour, roll into balls, and press with a fork. No eggs needed, no fancy flavors, just pure, buttery goodness. Depression-era cost, 10 cents for 2 dozen. Today, these cookies cost $1.50 per batch, just 6 cents each compared to 50 cents for bakery cookies. Budget bakers now save up to $70 monthly with this recipe. Their secret? The longer you cream the ingredients, the better they taste. Mother Nature had one last trick up her sleeve. Mock apple pie. In 1934, when apples were scarce as gold, someone made an incredible discovery. Ritz crackers, when baked with sugar, cinnamon, and lemon, created a pie filling nearly identical to fresh apples. This culinary magic trick became the talk of church socials across America. The deception was perfect. Crushed crackers soaked up the sweet, spiced syrup, creating a texture remarkably similar to cooked apples. Even experienced bakers were fooled. During hard times, one pie cost 17 cents. Today's version runs about $3. That's 38 cents per slice, compared to $5 to $6 for real apple pie. Creative bakers report saving up to $60 monthly using this conversation-starting recipe. The best part? Nobody guesses the secret ingredient until you tell them. As families mastered these money-saving miracles, they proved that creativity could conquer any shortage. These 25 Depression-era recipes could save your family over $4,800 annually in today's soaring grocery prices. That's kitchen wisdom worth its weight in gold. Want to master these money-saving techniques? Hit subscribe and join our community of smart cooks bringing these recipes back to life. Share your own family recipes in the comments below. Let's keep this precious knowledge alive together. See you next week for more kitchen history that saves you money.